Welcome back to the News Hub. In a late scoop Sunday night, the Wall Street Journal's Liz Hoffman and Dana Mattioli broke the news that Burger King and Tim Hortons may become one. First off, great work, Liz. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, besides the obvious synergies that everyone always says in a merger, what is this deal really about?
Depends on who you ask, but there are certainly tax perks to be had here. In the process, Burger King would relocate to Canada, move its legal home to Canada, and probably save some in taxes in the process.
And this is that fancy word we've been hearing thrown a lot about, is inversions. We've seen it in the healthcare industry. We've seen it mostly in Europe. This is not healthcare. This is not Europe. So is this a much broader trend we could be looking at?
I think this shows there's some staying power for certain companies for an inversion. There's been some concern that there was going to be some backlash and people might start shying away from it. It's become a little bit of a political hot button, but I think this shows that for the right price, people will continue to do it. This makes a lot of sense.
And then overhanging all this is Washington doesn't seem too thrilled with inversions. We've had a scoop last week from our D.C. bureau. Treasury secretaries looking into inversions and potentially making moves. How does that factor in? I mean, what if the government comes in and makes some big plays? Will that kill this deal, or are there tea leaves that this maybe will still happen?
We've heard from people close to the deal that this doesn't have what they call a walk-away right. Some of these deals we've seen have been structured with the ability for the buyer to say, I'm out of here if D.C. cracks down. This appears not to have that, which means that both companies think there's enough strategic merit without the tax perks, so they'd certainly like them.
And this isn't for Tim Hortons, this isn't the first time they'd be owned by an American company. Can you tell us a little backstory on Tim Hortons? You know, a couple of years ago was a part of Wendy's.
Sure, it was bought by Wendy's in 1995. Wendy's was trying to move beyond some of their burgers and fries, and they owned them for for a little over 10 years. There was a couple activist hedge funds came in and said, spin it off, and they did. Spun it off in 2006. It was a U.S. company for a couple of years, and then moved back to Canada, where its roots and almost all of its business really are.
It's always about the activist investors making the move.
They stir the pot.
And then the other thing in this is for Burger King going forward. Burger King has a competitor, McDonald's. McDonald's has got McCafe. They've moved into the coffee business. Burger King's tried a little bit with Seattle's Best and made some moves on the edges. Is this more be a double down and trying a lot more with their coffee business?
They certainly get a lot of new products here that have a lot of customers that really like them, and there's that, I think they think that's the strategic merit to the deal. Tax perks aside, there are a lot of products that they can do, and we think this has a lot to do with trying to move Tim Hortons abroad and kind of expand them internationally, which Burger King has a lot of experience with.
So you'd finally have some really interesting coffees when you walk into a Burger King instead of just
what's the flavor of the month at Tim Hortons?
Yeah, the flavor of the month at Tim Hortons was a coffee with donut and Oreo cookies.
There you go.
As I found
Sold.
in Nova Scotia. Sold. I'm going to stay away from that. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Liz.
Thanks for having me.
It's a great scoop.